Welcome to Budget Beauty, where I help you look flawless for less. Welcome back, and a very special welcome if you're new here. My name is Jen, and this is Budget Beauty. We do everything beauty on a budget, and that includes testing new eyeshadow palettes. The eyeshadow palettes, in my opinion, are the best of the best. But there are some mainstream eyeshadow palettes and brands that typically catch my attention, and Natasha Denona is one of those. Now, I have purchased a few of her midi-size palettes. I have quite a few of her mini palettes, and when she released her newest mini palette, I immediately said, add to cart. It spoke to me because it's colorful, it's beautiful, and it has a Triochrome, which is her version of a duochrome. So I'm curious if it compares to indie makeup. So I picked up the brand new Natasha Denona Mini Triochrome palette. I am going to go ahead and insert close-ups and swatches here for you. This is a blue palette. There are 3 mattes and 2 shimmers. One of those shimmers is a Triochrome, which again is Natasha Denona's version of a duochrome, and that is this shifty blue shade that kind of shifts from blue to gold to silver to purple. There's this beautiful bluey icy white shimmer as well, and then we have blue mattes. We have a light, a mid-tone, and a deep. These palettes retail for $29. I will link it down below for you. I know that you can purchase this at Ulta. I believe this is an Ulta exclusive palette. That is where I purchased mine, and I'm really excited to see if this is the typical Natasha Denona formula and what she does with this whole duochrome, triochrome situation. So if you're excited, give this video a big thumbs up, subscribe if you're not, turn your bell on because I upload lots and lots of new videos every single week. I will of course link the new mini triochrome palette down below for you, as well as my favorite beauty boxes, all of the other makeup that I'm wearing in today's video if you would like to recreate this look. And don't forget to come follow me over on TikTok for a little bit more beauty on a budget. I'm going to use all 5 shades. Let's test it out and see if it's worth the money. Now, you know I love my indie makeup, and like I said, you just really can't compare to indie shadows, but I'm curious what Natasha can do for this price point for these special shades. So before I go in with the first matte in the palette, let's prime my eyes with my MAC Paint Pot and Painterly. This is my go-to eyeshadow primer. I use it every time I apply shadow. For me, it just keeps it in place, prevents it from creasing, and is really going to be a true test of the quality of both the mattes and the shimmers. So I'm going to pick up the lightest matte in the palette. Now the shade names are on the back. It's confusing as to what order these are in, but I think this is the shade Shine. But again, it is that lightest blue matte, and I'm going to use that as my transition. Ooh, that's pretty. That's quite a bit of color payoff for the lightest matte in the palette. I'm going to buff that in my crease, and then I'm actually going to pull that up a little bit above my crease. Since I have hooded eyes, I do want that blue shade to pop out, even with the deeper shade that we're going to use in the crease. So this shade is really, really beautiful. It's definitely more opaque and a little bit deeper even than I expected. It is the typical Natasha Denona matte formula. It's applying really, really nicely. I will say when I swatched the palette, the 2 deeper mattes, they took a little bit of work to get a good swatch. Now we know that swatches don't tell the whole story. On the eyes, they can apply beautifully. Sometimes they swatch beautifully and don't on the eyes. Sometimes they swatch horribly and are beautiful on the eyes. Now they didn't swatch horrible. I just felt like I had to build them up. So I'm curious how they're going to apply to the eyes. Now I'm going to pick up the really pretty kind of cobalt blue matte in the palette on the opposite side of that fluffy brush, and that I'm going to focus just in the crease. So I'm going to tap, 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 and blend in that windshield wiper motion just to really deepen up the crease. I do want the lighter matte to pop out at the top. So again, just focusing on the crease. This shade is applying nicer to the eye than it did in the swatch. However, it's not that much different than that crease shade. I mean, obviously it's a little bit deeper, a little bit more bright, but it's not this massive difference between the 2 shades as much as I would have expected in the pan. It is, however, a beautiful cobalt blue, and like I said, it's applying much better than it swatched. am going to go back into that lightest matte shade one more time and just use that to blend those edges. And again, I do want that to pop out above the crease. So I'm going to just apply a little bit more shadow and do a little bit more blending. Now going into the deepest matte on an angled brush, I'm going to pick that up and use that to add some depth. So I'm going to just pop that on the outer corner, the outer V of my eye. You guys know I need depth in my eye look. I need a deep, dark shade for that outer V. That shade is really pretty. That is a nice navy blue shade. I am going to say again though that in the pan, these three blues look very different. However, when applied to the eye, I just don't see a lot of difference. I feel like we could build up any three of these mattes to get a deeper shade, which is great, but I just wish there was a little bit of difference in the mattes in this palette. I will, however, say that this navy shade, this deep shade, applied much better than the swatches. It took a little bit of building up in the swatches, and when applying it to my eyes, it's really opaque right off of the bat. This shade is definitely deeper and darker than the other two blues. It's just those other two blues, they're not that different on the eyes. They're not that different, unfortunately. But this deepest dark blue shade here, this one is beautiful and really added the depth I was looking for. I am going to use my NYX Glitter Primer as always as a base before we go in with these shimmery shades. I'm so excited for this Triochrome shade. I really want to compare it to Indie Makeup. I expect the Indie Makeup to be better, but I'm hoping Natasha Denona can pull through for us so we have a good Triochrome, Duochrome, and a mainstream makeup brand. Now I want to test out the shimmers like I always do. One shade with my finger, one shade with a brush. So I'm going to pick up the Triochrome shade. Now I will tell you that it swatched beautifully and it has quite the shift to it. So I'm excited for this. And I'm going to tap that on the outer 3/4 of my lid. Ooh, that is pretty. That is really pretty. I will say first impression, looking at it, I see the shift from blue to purple to silver. It's definitely not an indie shimmer. It's not giving me that really foiled, wet look that I kind of would expect from a shimmer like this. However, it is really pretty. And with duochromes and triochromes, I feel like you get the best payoff with your finger. So I definitely wanted to use my finger for this shade. Turning my head here and looking at it a little bit more in the light, it is really pretty. It's just not as foiled and shifty as I would have liked. It is a pretty shade, and for a mainstream triochrome duochrome, it's really pretty. I do, however, want to go into the lighter shimmer in the palette. That one looks really shifty as well. I'm going to pick that up on a flat brush, and I'm going to use that on the inner portion of my lid and then pull that into the other shimmer shade. Okay, that's pretty. It's pretty, but it's not anything super special, honestly. I expected more from this shade. I thought it would be a little more icy, a little more of that icy blue. I mean, it's pretty and it definitely adds some dimension to the look. It's just not what I thought that it would be. It's not as foiled and sparkly and pretty as I thought that it would be. I am going to also tap that as an inner corner highlight. Now on that flat brush, I'm going to pick up the deepest blue shade, probably my favorite shade in the palette as far as performance goes, and I'm going to just buff that on my lower lash line. And I'm going to stick really close to my lash line because I want to go in with that triochrome shade on the lower lash line as well to kind of diffuse this out. Now picking up that triochrome on a brush, since we used a finger, let's test it on a brush as well. And I'm going to buff that on the lower lash line and blow that out a little bit, make it a little bit more messy. Now that's really pretty on the lower lash line. You know what? Let's go in with our brush again in that triochrome shade since we're here, and let's see if we can get a little bit more by applying that with a brush versus the finger. So I'm getting I would say similar payoff with the brush. So nothing spectacular, no spectacular difference between the brush and the finger. And then lastly, back into that lightest shimmer shade with that flat brush. And I'm just going to, again, kind of tap in the inner corner and pull that under my lower lash line just a little bit. And last but not least, with the big fluffy brush, no added shadow. I'm just going to give everything one kind of quick blend. So here is the completed look. Let me go ahead and do a liner, pop a color on my waterline mascara, and I'll be back to share with you my final thoughts on the Natasha Denona Mini Triochrome palette. So I'm dressed and ready to head to the gym and give you my final thoughts on the Mini Natasha Denona Triochrome palette. Overall, I think this palette is good for mainstream. So first, let's talk about the mattes. The mattes swatched, especially these two shades right here. It took a little bit of building up to get a good swatch, but applied to the eyes, the swatches are really nice. Typical Natasha Denona formula. This deep navy shade, I love it. That's what's in my outer corner. That definitely added some dimension, layered beautifully on the other mattes, gave some depth. The lighter matte and this beautiful cobalt matte, they're not that different on the eyes. Maybe the cobalt is a little bit brighter and more blue, and then this matte was a little bit more opaque than even I thought that it was going to be. So I feel like they could have given us a little bit more of a difference in those two mattes. However, overall, I think the mattes are really nice. They applied beautifully. They're opaque. They layered nicely. They are not patchy at all. Now, when it comes to the shimmers, first let's talk about the Triochrome, aka the Natasha Denona version of a duochrome. This is really pretty. As I put on the rest of my makeup, did my hair, got ready for the day, I kept looking at this thinking, this is really pretty. It is shifty. It is what I would expect from a mainstream duochrome. It is nowhere near an indie duochrome. They blow it out of the water. But I would say for mainstream, this is a nice Triochrome duochrome. This shade right here was a little lackluster in my opinion. Again, looking at it a little bit more closely, it's pretty. It definitely added that iciness to the look, and the shimmers are very different in the palette, which I appreciate, but this just isn't as shifty, sparkly, wet, foily looking as I would have expected. Again, my mind is set indie, so I have to really think about mainstream, and for mainstream, it's a nice shimmer. It's pretty, it's opaque, you can see that it's beautiful on the eyes, and again, I do like that they are so different. Overall, I like this palette. I think it's worth the money. Do you need this palette? I don't know. It depends on what you have in your collection, and do you have a lot of indie palettes? If you have a lot of indie blue shades, you probably don't need this. If you don't, you may really like this palette. For me, I have a large collection. However, I am actually happy that I picked this up, especially for that shifty shade and just having a small blue eyeshadow palette in my collection. I feel like it's definitely worth the $29 price point. And if you can get a discount on the Ulta website or even use your Ulta points, even better. So overall, I think it's worth the money. I like my look. I think my eye look came out beautifully, and I'm excited about this palette. It's great for travel, and it's great if you don't have a lot of blue eyeshadow in your collection. So overall, I would say it's definitely not one that you need to skip. It's one that you could pick up, and I think you'd be really happy with your purchase. So let me know down below, are you picking up the Mini Triochrome palette? I will link it down below for you, as well as my favorite beauty subscription boxes, all of the other makeup that I'm wearing today, if you would like to kind of recreate this look, discounts to my favorite indie brands, and don't forget to come follow me over on TikTok for a little bit more beauty on a budget. So there you have it, my honest review on the Natasha Denona Mini Triochrome palette.